who's really helping me out right now. The first thing we got really is the home of the honeybee. And what they really like to do is they're gonna put like boxes down. And has anybody ever seen those boxes before? Alright, so they've got like, so you got the top, the middle, and then you got the bottom. And it depends on however many boxes you need. The number of boxes is gonna help like however big you want your hive. Now, we used to have like 750 hives. And we were doing stacks of 5 to 6, and then when we moved them down to Georgia, they were in like stacks of 3 and pallets of 4. And this is what the inside room looks like. This right here is the honeycomb. And then right in here you got a little bit of mixture of larvae, and up in here it looks like you got honey or some of the jelly that they eat, which is just like a high grade honey. And that's pretty much where they're all at. And then, let's see here, it's gonna tell me some stuff on the back. Yeah, up there. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so bees fly during the day. They pollinate. Whatever it could be. It could be trees, flowers, fruit, vegetable crops. So they only fly during the day. They come back to their hive at night, especially when it's cool, and they put all that, all the nectar and everything else back in the hive. In that picture there, there's a comb. The little cells are all comb. The comb is a limited space because that's where that's their their hive, and that's where all their food is stored. So it's just a limited space in there where all the honeybees go back to at night. It's basically their home. On the food gathering part of it. Yeah.
Alright. Well, Ryan's got these out for me. So we'll just look through and find it, I guess. Alright, this is like the food gathering poster. Honeybees, to gather their food, they just kind of like fly around to find it. And when they do end up finding it, well, it's actually based on colors. So like, the way you see a flower is not the way that a bee's seeing a flower. It's seeing it in flower colors like, let's see here, like a neon green, or like really like a light turquoise would be like the color pollen, and bees really pick up on that with their eyes. So when they find the pollen, they're actually going right down onto it, and then when they're onto it, they've got this little pouch that's actually, like, I don't know what people call it, I call it a pouch. But that's where all the pollen's going to go. So the bee's going to actually just kind of like mess around in it until it gets pollen all up on its legs, and then it's going to shove it right into there. And then, so once it's into there, the bee's going to actually eat it. And when they eat it, they're storing it in like this place inside their stomach where it's actually not like eaten, but once they get back to the hive, they're going to like pretty much like throw it up. And they're going to put it into a cell to store for later.
Yeah, so like we said before, the bees only do this in good weather. They only go out there and collect that pollen in good weather. They kind of just fly around and buzz around that until they get it all over their body, and then they put it in that pouch or inside them, and then go back to the hive and basically put that in there. It's food storage for them, if you will. They usually don't sting when they're busy working like this. There's another key on that, and it'll lead us into the next one here. Food sharing.
Alright. So this is actually just like a bee feeding another bee, because I'm pretty sure it is the female bees that feed the male bees because the male bees don't eat.
That's correct.
I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. And so the male bees, they just don't feed themselves, so they'll die without a female being around, because they have to actually like, they have the organs inside of them that actually like can pull the honey in and do that, whereas a worker bee is not going to have it, which is also a male bee, which isn't going to have that because they gotta go out and work and they gotta fly around more, so they're not as heavy, and if they're heavy, they have that in them. That's pretty much.
And each bee box that you see, if you've seen them before, but each box or each hive has to have their own queen, which a queen is a female, and like he said, each hive needs a female to survive, to either feed or to pollinate or reproduce other worker bees or drone bees.
Yeah. All right, does anybody know what fanning is without looking at PowerPoint? Anybody ever heard of that? No? Okay. Has anybody ever heard of the bee dance? Like how bees do that dance? Okay, that's fanning. Bees like to go out and tell other bees about it, but they can't talk, they can't make noise really besides flapping their wings. So they're gonna do a little dance. That's called fanning. Let's see here. What bees would do the fanning? It'd be more of a worker bee that does the fanning. And once one does it, all of them start to join in. Like once one, it's like playing the game telephone, relays to each other, and they just figure out where to go from there.
They kind of, and along with that, they communicate through smell. So if everything's going good and they're working and they're laying in the hive there and out pollinating, it'll smell kind of like baking bread baking in the oven or baking. If they feel they're in danger or they're angry when you're in there, you know, messing with the hive or pulling honey, it'll have a distinct smell of bananas, like real ripe bananas. And you know, when we used to work and when we smelt bananas, it was one of those things where we hurried up and got done and left them alone because they have a tendency to sting at that time. And once they sting once, they're done. So they only sting if they feel that the hive is in danger. They're very protective of the hive and the queen. So if you start smelling bananas that on a swarm or even at a hive, it means they feel endangered or they are they're angry. Queen bee.
Alright, so this right here is the queen bee. She's a lot bigger than all the other bees, and, well, actually most people, well, not us anymore, but when people like first start getting into bees and they want to start using them, their queen bee might die, so they're going to have to get a new one. So when they get their new one, they're actually going to paint her back. Right in here, they're going to paint it red, green, blue, anything to make it a different color from all the other ones so you can tell, because it's not actually that much bigger than all of these. Because you might get a drone bee, whereas these are females right up in here, and then she's another female, but these are worker females. And then you're going to have a drone bee, which is actually probably a couple millimeters bigger, and it's kind of hard to tell. But she's the one that's going to do well actually she doesn't do much besides make babies, and then disperse them into the cells. And
So the queen bee is kind of distinct too. The queen bee has a longer tail in the back, and sometimes when they're younger, it has the little indents on its back are black. But you can tell the queen bee different from the worker bees because it has a longer tail, if you will, and that's what she uses to back into each one of these cells and to either reproduce or you know, make honey. This little box right here is what queen bee, when you try and start a hive, or when you do start a hive, you put bees in there. Like we said, every hive needs a queen bee there to reproduce. This has got a little hole at the top where you can stick the queen bee in, and you stick this in the hive on one of the frames there to introduce. You have to introduce. You can't just put her in there. You have to introduce her slowly like this so the other bees can smell her and get used to her. So it's got basically a little screen on the front. We pack the top there with some bee comb, so the worker bees eat at that bee comb to let her out, or she'll eat on the backside to let it out. But it's gradual and slow. So this is how we introduce new queens to each hive, or each cell, or hive, if you will, I guess.
Ryan, I might have missed it, but how do you know that the hive needs a queen bee?
You'll start noticing a decrease in bees. Like the bee count will go from 1,000 to 500, and then these the frames, the cells, they will not be capped off white. The capped off with white means there's larvae inside there, that those will all be new bees, or she'll cap off the honey, which is like a light gray color, and you won't get any the worker bees won't be laying any honey or laying in those if there's no queen in there. They'll just be buzzing around and eventually swarm if there's no queen in there. So it's real easy to pick up the queen. She is distinctly bigger than all the other worker bees, and this tail gives her away. She's usually found on the very bottom box, sometimes in the second one off the ground, but she's usually down towards the bottom because that's where a lot of that reproduction goes, and then up from there they start food storage from that one up. So they usually use the bottom one. They're very organized if you think about it, because the bottom one's all for reproduction, and then they come up through their food storage there if they need it, and then out the top to go you know, work, if you will. Anything you want to add?
Nah, you know that.
Okay. And that's where the saying, the queen bee, meaning the you know, the boss, the ruler, that's where the kind of the saying queen bee comes from, as far because they basically are the leader of the hive. If there's not a queen in the hive, they will not survive and they will swarm. So going on here to egg laying, what the queen does.
Alright, so like I said, they're gonna paint the queen, like paint the back of her. This one's red, so you can tell that this is actually the queen. And then this is a drone bee, and right here's a female would be this one right here, because it's nice and small. But okay, so all these bees actually, they're gonna come around her sometimes, just to like protect her. So in this picture, it kind of gives me away that there's something in the hive right now as she's laying eggs, because they're just kind of crowding around her, and that doesn't usually happen. And so the first thing she's gonna do when she lays an egg is she's gonna put her head into the cell, which they're gonna actually, well, first they're gonna build the cell up because it's flat, and they have to put more wax on it. So all the female worker bees that produce the wax, they're gonna put wax on it, it's gonna build it out. And then she's gonna stick her head in it, make sure it's safe, it's clean, and then she's gonna take her head back out, and she's just gonna put her rear end in there, and she's gonna lay an egg. And then the other bees will close it over when she's done, and she'll just move on to the next one. She has to try and get 1,200 in a day, and she lays, I don't know how many she lays in like a minute, probably not that many.
They need 1,200, she needs to lay 1,200 a day because bees are so sensitive. Nowadays, a lot of bees fly off. They can fly within they travel 3 to 5, maybe 7 miles away from their hive a day. But with you know, driving a car down the road and hitting a bee, or farmers spraying fields of soybeans or corn out there, or even fruit or vegetables, and they spray, and some of that spray kills them off. Some of them don't make it back to the hive. A lot of them don't. And like I said, if they feel endangered, they will sting, but they can sting once and then they're dead, or they will die off. So she's got to lay at least 1,200 to keep that hive going, more bees to come up, more worker bees, because once they get that food storage, they need more food storage, and that's why you continue to add boxes and frames on there so they can fulfill that for winter. So she's got to lay that many to keep the hive going, and some of them that she lays are, you know, not fertile and they will not produce, but the majority will, you know, produce, and she'll cap those off with a white cap, and that's how you can tell that specific piece on that frame is reproduction or another bee in there. The rest they put, they intermix their honey, their food storage with that, but if they don't have enough room, but the majority of that reproduction is going on in the bottom frame. Here's a good picture of a, this is the comb right here. The white larva that we were talking about is the worker bees cap that off, or the other bees cap that off, and that white larva is another bee in there eventually. So go ahead there, Brian.
Alright, does anybody know what royal jelly is? You ever heard of that? Like, nobody's ever had royal jelly? Okay, so royal jelly is just it's a high grade, really clear honey, whereas like honey that you buy at the store has got a lot of sugar in it, and if you let it sit over time, it's going to become hard. So this stuff just like, it wouldn't get real hard because it ain't got a whole lot of sugar in it. It's just high grade, so it's really like thin, really runny. And that's what all these bee larvae are going to actually eat. This one right, okay, actually, right here, if you guys can all see this, this one was just like, alright, here, I'll try and figure this out. This one right here was just like, just laid, and then it actually like kind of slowly progresses as it goes over this way. So this one would be like, I don't know, probably a day or so old, but right here it's actually eating that royal jelly, still eating royal jelly, and then right here, yeah. When it gets to about right here, that's about day 6. It's actually gonna go over to start eating like pollen, like a normal bee would, like a pollen mixture, if you will.
And that's more of a dry. It's when you shake a flower, you get all that floury or powdery yellow stuff on you. That's what the bees are eating, the dry pollen mix there,
Yeah.
or excuse me, getting on their feet, and that's what they bring back. Raising the new queen.
Yeah, I think that's the poster I got. Yeah, it is. All right, so to raise a new queen, you need to have a hive. And the only reason that you should have to raise a new queen is she either dies or she leaves. And actually, it happens a lot more than you think. The queen's just going to leave her hive, and that's just because usually the bees kick her out. They're just like, we're done with you, we're getting a new leader, and then they get someone else. But that's actually, this right here is a swarm, and that happens when a queen bee leaves. When she leaves, she takes half the hive with her, and they go and they try to start a new colony. And once they do that, they just swarm on something, and they all kind of like surround her and keep her healthy. So these bees will actually like feed her, and that ends up like killing them all off, so they'll all die with time. Because they don't have anything to put anywhere.
And when you usually see a swarm, it is, fairly large like this, and that goes to show when she has to lay 1,200. This was a healthy hive at one time because there's quite a few bees on here, but that goes to show you, she has to lay 1,200, a day to keep that healthy because, like I said, there is a lot of bees here, and she took half of them with her. The other half are out there flying. So that's kind of a good picture to show. This was a healthy hive at one time, but at least half of them have left. So that kind of goes to show, or gives you an idea of how many are in a hive working at a time.
Alright, so a drone bee, that's a male bee, and they're a lot bigger than another bee. These are the ones that actually like, I don't know, they kind of go out. They're the ones that do the bee dance. And actually a drone, since they're a lot bigger, they get a bigger cell, which is actually like cut off from the rest of the hive. Like these ones would be, so you got 3 boxes, these ones are being laid at the very bottom. They're the first ones, the first layer of everything. And the queen bee usually, they're just not like laid a whole lot. There's very few drone bees in a hive.
You can't really control the drone bee versus the worker bee, but they're just like I wouldn't say a different breed, but they just get laid too as well. Like he said, they just go out there and
Oh yeah, I forgot to point up
go
there.
ahead.
Actually, so the way that a drone bee is going to get out is by chewing its way out. That's a lot different from a regular like female bee, because they're going to actually have someone let them out. These ones got to chew their way out. So no one lets them out, and they can't chew their way out, they're dead, they die. And that's how actually some hives, they die out because of that. Because there's no bees to let them out. So they just die. Alright, so drone bees are going to leave the colony, and that's just because they get kicked out. Like they don't just like leave to go take the queen with them. It's because they're just getting kicked out, which this happens in winter, and that's why your hives are gonna thin down, and that's why people don't leave their bees up here, because they just die off because these drone bees get kicked out of the hive. It's how Mother Nature works.
The drone bee's not completely worthless, but the reason they kick those out is because they are putting all the food back, all the honey back in their hive for winter, and that's basically for the queen and the worker bees to survive. And basically they kick these drones out so they don't eat their food source is kind of how that whole thing works. So they are somewhat a different breed, but they're not, as far as, if you will, because they're getting kicked out of the hive. They are a bee, but they're not a worker bee or a queen bee, a necessity to the hive. Swarm.
Oh god.
Someone, we touched on this a little bit. A swarm is when the queen bee leaves or dies off. The bees all leave their home and kind of find a new place to call home, if you will.
Yeah, this is alright, this is something my dad told me a long time ago. I'm not sure if it's like true or not, but there's actually like queen fights where like, so there'll be a queen and she'll be in a swarm and the swarm will be going by and they'll see this, like, they'll see boxes here. But the boxes aren't completely empty. Let's say like the old queen from this one left, there's a new queen that's in that hive and then another old queen coming from another box to come here. And you'll actually get like a giant swarm, if you will, of 3 queen bees in one hive. Like, okay, so like if I was to walk in this room and there were 3 queen bees fighting right here, I wouldn't walk into this room because the swarm would be so big. It's just, yeah, it's big.
She would have all of her worker, or half of her worker bees with her, so that's why, 3 different.
Yeah, and then the queens will actually fight to keep that, and usually they die, all 3 of them. Like, usually there's no survivor because they'll die.
Exactly. So each cell or each hive needs a queen, but if you have 2 in there, one will, either the worker bees or the queen bee will fight that one, and whichever one survives will be the queen to that hive. That's why when there is a hive with no queen in there and it's starting to, get weaker and weaker, you introduce a new queen to that hive. The worker bees can sense that, and you introduce her like this, or else they'll attack her. But if they can't attack her and get used to her in that hive, then eventually, as she moves her way out of the box, she'll start, performing the duties of a queen bee in that hive. But each hive needs a queen bee, but more than one is gonna, make the hive fail, if you will, or one of them will get killed off.
Alright, so these right here are what the boxes look like that I'm talking about, and then these are the, what are they called? Frames? They're called frames, and then they've got all the wax in between it, and they come, this one's actually full. Let's see here. No, they don't have any that are like brand new. Brand new ones are like really thin, like paper in between, and the bees will actually make the wax to pull it out. This man is wearing a, well, he's actually not wearing a full suit, but we wear full suits that Ryan's going to show you later. And this is a smoker right here that he's got. That's to actually keep the bees inside their box so they don't come out and just swarm them. Because they will. If something gets in there, like, they'll swarm them. That's why actually bears die from that. And that's pretty much all that you need to know about a bee.
So humans use bees, or they are a necessity to reproduction as far as food, and a lot of people raise bees to pollinate fruit or vegetables, or just to have honey during the year. Wax from the beehives are used for candles, and other. You can melt wax down to use for other things.
It's good for people that have allergies, like just chewing on it. People say that helps a lot.
You can make their soaps are made out of soaps, and skin products are used from bees. Local bees, they say if you eat local honey from local bees pollinating the area, your allergies tend to go down if you have seasonal allergies from pollen or ragweed, because those bees are pollinating it. So you eat that honey and you introduce it to your body, your tendency of having allergies kind of go down. The way to people split these bees once they get so high, you can split half of this the hive down by taking not all of its honey, but taking half of it and introducing a new queen. And that's how we split hives when they get so big. We split and make more, and that's how you can grow your operation. If you take half the worker bees, you got to be careful you don't take the queen, or find the queen and take half the cells and introduce a new queen. It's not a 100% guarantee, but you've got a 50-50 chance that you can make a new hive by introducing a new queen if the worker bees accept the queen. So that's kind of how we grew our operation. We bought plenty of queens That's what you'll need, and we've bought some worker bees over the years, and that's how you get started. But the cheaper way to do that is to use the bees you have, or to use the reproduction of other hives to make more cells to grow your operation, to be able to pollinate more and to get more honey. If you're just starting out, a nuke box is just a special box with very few frames, and it's a little taller, so the bees have room to grow, but it keeps them kind of compact in a smaller box instead of a box with multiple frames on it. But people usually buy 3 frames of bees, which the frames are the little inserts in the plastic comb on there, and then 3 pounds of bees with a new queen, and that'll get a hive rolling. And eventually, once they outgrow or get enough bees to fill that nuke box, then you start introducing more frames so they can start laying more larvae and or honey. So that's kind of how they're related to us in general as far as benefits from it. We can get it by pollinating fruit and vegetables, so we can have something to eat too as well. And then the honey, of course. Honey has multiple effects, as in good things it brings to the man as far as lessening allergies, or just a sweet, a sweet paste, if you will, for or cooking essential for a lot of bakers. So that's really all we have. We're gonna show here, like Brian said, a
Brian,
smoker.
would you flip that one light switch on?
This one?
Yeah, flip that up. There you go.
When we work bees, we'll start from the front. A bee suit is essential. Most professional beekeepers usually graduate down to, this is a full bee suit here, so it goes all the way down to your boots. It's got elastic on the bottom there that you tighten up so the bees can't get in there. It's got a full zipper with Velcro, and of course your top there, which is breathable. You can see what you're doing. It just all zips and connects. I wore this for a lot of years and got stung quite a bit, but it's a heavy felt material there that you wear underneath. Like I said, if you wear jeans or keep them off your skin, usually when you go in there, a lot of them don't sting you if they don't sense you're doing any harm. If you go in there, real quick, check the frames. If it's overly crowded, you add a new frame onto it and get out. They usually don't mess with you. When you start, when you drop a box on there, or put a box on there, or kick, one, or pull a frame out and drop it, that's when they start, getting aggravated. So if you don't, necessarily put them in danger, they really have no business stinging, and they usually won't. The gloves, they just kind of go on there, just a real thick leather glove, and they usually go, halfway up your arm when you're carrying those frames. They kind of rest right there, and you can kind of, that's why they go up so high there. If a bee gets caught in between there, they kind of protect you, if you will, on the skin. We have a smoker, like Brian said. When you work bees, you smoke them down. It just basically fogs them out, so they kind of get a sense of, they kind of get a drowsy sense, if you will. So you can, if they're angry, it kind of calms them down. But not only that, it gets them out of the way so you can see what you're doing. So it just it opens up, and there's bee pellets that you put inside here. It's just basically like a fire there that you. They're just bee pellets. It's just a real smoke. It's like you have a fire going on inside this can. And then when you squeeze it and add oxygen to it, it just blows out like a puff of smoke, if you will. So you just use this when you go up to the hive, and when you pull the top off there, there's bees up top, you just smoke them, and they usually all go down to the bottom section, so you can check frames and work with them. Just kind of a calming additive, or a relief to you to get them out of the way so you can see what you're doing. He's got a hive tool in his hand. Just basically, the hive tool lets you peel apart when you go in there. Just lets you peel apart a lot of the boxes, because some boxes are stuck together with honey, honey is real sticky, so just a hive tool is really essential, or a screwdriver you could use too as well. But it's almost like just a flat bar or a scraper, but it allows you to pry open each box that's on each other, or get in there and pull the frame up. Like I said, these get real sticky a lot, or you lose them in leaving them lay somewhere. But this is an essential tool into tending bees. So, any other questions? Any questions, I should say?
Talk about the time, I know that they put the bees, I don't know if they took the hives, talk about the process of the time they shipped them to California.
Okay, if I get some pictures, I'll email them to you from back in the day. But every year in Indiana, we have the winter. So the bees work all spring, all summer, and all fall long until it gets super cold out. Like I said, the bees don't fly when it's rainy, when the bad weather. If it's cold or rainy or wet, bees really don't fly. They hang out at their hive. But when it's sunny out and the weather's nice and warm, they go out there and the worker bees perform. So in Indiana, we have the winter months, and that's what the bees work for all spring, summer, and fall. They go out there, get the pollen, gather it up, get a lot of other bees, and store all their honey back at their hive. And that's their food source during the winter months when they can't go out and pollinate. So they eat that honey, if you will, that we eat, the same honey we eat. They'll eat that honey too as well. So that's their food storage for the winter. If you're in Indiana here and you are a professional beekeeper, or you're using beekeeping as a method of income, the honey is what you want to sell. The raw honey product is what you want to sell. That comb is what you want to sell. So during the fall, we pull out each one of those frames, and there's a special piece of equipment called a spinner. And you put these frames on a spinner, and it spins it real fast in a big stainless steel tank. And it spins it real fast, and the honey, it ejects the honey off the frame. And it goes on the sides of the stainless steel tank and drips down to the bottom. And then it's a whole different process for making honey. But when you steal the bee's food source for the winter, and you drop the whole bee frame down to about 2 boxes with no food value on there, or no food source for the winter, you're basically setting them up for danger or failure for the winter months if you take their food source. So each year when we were doing bees, we'd take their whole food source, and we'd put powdered sugar and water back in a plastic drum after we took their food source away. And about this time of year, when it started getting cold in the early fall, late fall, we'd ship them to Georgia or California to pollinate the orange fields, the almond fields, and blueberries down south, because the weather's warm down there. They can fly all the time. The weather's good, and they can pollinate other things growing year round down there. So when you take their food source, you got to provide them with another food source, or they'll die off, or they'll need time to make more. So with the powdered sugar and water and a drum with a stick kind of coming out the side, the bees can land on the stick and get down there and get. That's kind of how we fed them their food source. It's sweet, powdered sugar and water. That's just a mixture that they like, and that gets them going again as far as food to survive while we're waiting around for the season to mature down in Georgia or California. Where it's hot like that all the time, there's different things blooming all the time. Usually in Georgia, when we send them down there for the blueberries, they usually are starting to need pollinated around February, March, and then their harvest is about April to May. So that's they really have to survive from about November here, October, November, December, and then find something to pollinate as far as alfalfa grasses or some basswood trees. Basswood trees is another one that bees like, but they'll pollinate those, or go around and you pollinate or fly around on those, and you feed them that powdered sugar water too, or we did it as far as to get them through till about February, March area, so then they can start putting honey back in there. And then it's a whole nother process when you're down there. They're making honey as well and making more bees as well. So down there, once you bring them back up this way in March, April, when things are needing pollinated up this way, the blueberries, the strawberries, and your vine crops in the summer months, and the weather starts to get nicer, when you bring them up this way, you can take all that honey back down there. We take that honey out, and then you've got more product to sell, to use, or to eat. So the way that's, like Brian said, the way we did it, we dropped it down to one frame on the bottom, and then possibly, depending on how healthy the hive was, we put another frame on top of that, a thinner frame, so that worker bees could get up there and withstand the ride. The ride is usually about a 30-hour ride from California to here, or about a 12-hour ride from the place we did in Georgia. But we usually drop it down to 1 or 2 frames, and then put it on a pallet of 4 hives on each pallet, and then we loaded them all up on a semi, 3 pallets high, and threw a big net over the top of it. And the drivers only drove at night because all the bees come back to their hive at night, so you had to load them in the dark with headlights, flashlights, and loaded them all up on a semi, threw the net across, and he was off during the night hours. They do drive during the day hours for a longer commute, but the ones that usually go from Georgia to here or whatnot usually drive at night where the bees are staying home. You'll lose some bees during the commute, or the bees will get out there, but that's why you kind of put that net on there so they don't all escape out of the hive. So.
Other questions? I have one more about honey. So different flowers, different plants at the different locations.
Yes.
So would California honey taste different than Northeast Indiana honey?
Essentially, if you go to the stores and look, next time you're at the store, look, there's different varieties of honey, if you will. There's a clover blossom honey. There's just a raw honey. There's sometimes, if you see it, an orange blossom honey. It definitely does have a distinct taste to it. I'm not sure how prominent they are here in Indiana, but if you go to where bees are more popular, Georgia, California, Florida, where they're there year-round, you can get blueberry honey, strawberry honey, orange blossom honey, almond honey, basswood honey, clover honey. Clover's another big plant that bees like to pollinate, and that's what a lot of people plant in their fields, if they will, to attract deer or other animals as well. But clover needs pollinated as well, and that's one of the more popular ones here in Indiana, is a clover honey. The orange blossom honey or the blueberry blossom honey has that faint orange taste or blueberry faint taste to it. If you really study it, or really just eat it raw, you can kind of tell. The clover honey is more of a darker honey, to whereas a raw honey like a basswood tree or one that's been pasteurized or filtered real fine, that's more of a lighter honey. And that's when you pasteurize it or filter it multiple times, that's when you take out those essential nutrients or essential pieces in that to make it beneficial for your body as far as the local. So when we did it, we just basically take the hive, spin it out, and there's the raw honey. And that's what we use, because if you heat that up and burn out all those good nutrients, then there's no health benefit, if you will, to it. I mean, honey does have some health benefit to it. It's a substitute for your maple syrup or your plain sugar syrup. Yeah, we usually do, when we sell our honey, we sell it raw, and it's just basically there's nothing been done to it. It comes right out of the tank or right out of the hive, and filtered once to get any of the dust, dirt, or bee particles out of it, and then it's put right into a bottle. Now the only thing, when we do that, the only issue that you have is you have a tendency to, if you leave it set over time, it'll crystallize. So when it crystallizes, basically no use to it, and when it crystallizes, it just gets hard, like basically an ice crystal or like an icicle. It just all gets hard. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can just heat that back up to 180 degrees and it'll turn runny again. But it's just a cosmetic flaw that people don't like to see if they're buying a product, for retail price. But there is really, honestly, nothing wrong with a crystallized honey. But that's one of the risks you take if you just take it right out of the hive, is that over time it will eventually crystallize because it's not heated up to 180 degrees. So it doesn't have any. All the nutrients burn out. It's basically a chemical reaction that crystallizes it again, or makes it form into a big flock.
All right, we're just about out of time. Is there any other questions for him real quick? Brian, are you an FFA at East Noble?
Yeah, I am.
Any of you FFA kids might see Brian at some events coming up. What grade are you in?
I'm a sophomore.
A sophomore at East Noble, and again, Ryan graduated from Garrett just a couple years ago. All right, let's thank them for coming in today. I'm sure they'll be here for just a couple minutes if you have a question as you pass for class. I'm sure they'll answer for you. You guys are dismissed. Have a good weekend.